Is demonic possession real?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, right? Priests get calls all the time, and I'll be honest, right? I mean, the majority of calls, the overwhelming majority of calls we get, it's usually they're struggling with something, right? They're dealing with a mental issue, or someone in their family is, and they're hoping we have the silver bullet. But what I will say is, recently in the United States, we have seen a rise in demonic activity. And situations where the church will go and investigate, and we determine that there's not another medical or psychological explanation, and so the church can be involved. It's become enough of a need in the United States recently that a lot of dioceses, right? So that's how the church organizes itself under bishops in the U.S. A lot of dioceses are starting to educate more and more priests in the rite of exorcism so that they can continue this ministry. So we just had 2 priests in my diocese underwent training in Chicago for that. And just this last year, my bishop actually brought a group of exorcists in to speak to all the priests in our area, just to educate us so that we can recognize
what is happening. What are you seeing?
So I think there could be a lot of explanations of why this is happening. I think one of the reasons is we're in a culture now that is accepting more and more degenerate lifestyles, right? So we live in such an overly sexualized culture now that, and it's not just sexualized, but it's sexualized in very obscene ways, right? And I think that's one gateway that is allowed to it. I think there's also, and you could speak to this, right? There's even a heightened interest, so to say, in things of the occult nowadays, right? In witchcraft and Satanism.
I would even say, as people often say, like, we live in a post-Christian society. We live in like an atheist society, but I would go as far as to say it's not an atheist society, it's a pagan society. And the interest in like new age things and like spiritual yoga and witchcraft and tarot and astrology and magic and all these other things, that's paganism. And obviously paganism is playing around with demons and opening yourself up to spiritual things you don't understand. So that's like wildly pervasive in culture. I mean, 4 out of every 5 girls you meet on Tinder have a crystal under their bed or whatever, Yeah. They have a shoebox with a freaking voodoo doll in it or whatever, and they're reading The Secret and doing all sorts of weird, like, pseudo magical things that are very insidious and open yourself up to like who knows what.
I mean, I remember when I was little, right? I mean, you could see your horoscope in the newspaper, but people just did that for fun, right? It wasn't really something that people a lot of believe. Now you go on Snapchat, right, and they're going to tell you your astrology sign on Snapchat when you meet someone, right? I mean, we've reached that level of sort of paganism in culture today.
Yeah, what's that app? There's an app when I was a single person that women would make you download to see if you're compatible.
I know what you're talking about.
It's like it's like about your sign or whatever, and they take it so seriously. It's insane. I can't remember what it's called, which is probably good.
But in terms of the new training and the increase in requests for exorcisms, are you seeing things like what are you seeing that's unexplainable or that defies?
So the things that the church normally is going to look for, does this person have knowledge of something they shouldn't have knowledge of? You have someone who couldn't speak Spanish before, but now they can, or you have an 80-year-old woman that, now she can lift 50 pounds, right? It's never like Hulk level. It's not like what you see in the movies, but something that's unexplainable on that level. One of the things that I've been told to look for by a priest that's involved in this, if I go into a house and there's something there that they can't explain how it got there, and you do see things like that every now and then.
Like objects that...
Yeah, objects or just, well, does anyone know where this came from?
Like a grimoire.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like, I mean, I went into a house 5 or 6 years ago in a previous assignment, and this woman was concerned. She wanted me to bless the house, and she said the weird things were happening there, and then she wanted me to see this Bible, and I was like, okay, well, let me see. Well, she opens the Bible, and the Bible's hollowed out, and you can tell that something had been smuggled inside this Bible, and she didn't know where this came from or who it belonged to, and so I took that from her and burned it.
Whoa.
Because you'll find weird things like that, or I was mentioning yesterday when I came in from the airport, just last month, I was asked to go bless a house, a family. So I live in Natchez, Mississippi. It's about 2 hours north of New Orleans. Well, a family from New Orleans bought this old house, and they want to make it an Airbnb. When they were renovating it, they went into the basement, and they found this sort of secret room that's under the front staircase of the house. And when you go in this room, I mean, there's a pentagram on the floor, and you have a table with a crystal ball in the middle, and there's animal bones on the walls, and there. So I took all of that and got rid of it all. And then they asked me, what should I do with this room? And I said, I don't think you do anything with this room. You leave it here. But yeah, so you're seeing that kind of thing now. And, and the thing is when people learn about it, right, they may not think it's cool, but they think it's interesting, right? And so people can get obsessive about it, and that will lead you down a path where now it's no longer just interesting. Now it does become cool, and
have you witnessed people speaking languages they shouldn't know how to speak?
So I haven't witnessed a lot of phenomena myself. I've seen some things that I thought were weird enough that I wanted to let the bishop know about it, that kind of thing. Trying to think of a good example of something.
I've seen supernatural stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced supernatural things, but when I was involved with this movie recently, someone had asked in an interview, they said, are you involved? Are you an exorcist yourself? And I said, my desire for that job is in the negatives. So I'm glad I'm not at that level, but I have priest friends that are, right? So, when they were calling me to be in the show, actually, one of the things I said is, it's usually hard to find a real exorcist because they don't like to talk about it, but I can talk about my friends' experiences, and so yeah, and I'm convinced this is a real thing, and I think it's something that people need to be aware of, but it's also not something I think people need to be actively afraid of or obsessive about.
I've heard that. Obviously, you said one of the things that they'll look for is something like some kind of supernatural ability or something like this, and there are stories. I believe they're more rare, but there are exorcists and witnesses who say they've seen weird things like levitation or things like that. Is that real?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of things like that. Most of the time, like I said, what I'm seeing is more of it's knowledge of something else. It's they have additional strength, or their voice is different. Things that could be identifiable as signs of a mental illness, but then when they're tested by a psychologist, the psychologist determines that there is no mental illness there. That kind of thing.
I started thinking about this because in the past several years, like especially since COVID, there are people that I've known my whole life that it seems like within the span of a week, their personalities flipped. They speak differently, they behave differently, and they're behaving in ways I would describe as evil. And it's shocked me. And maybe, for those that are out there that are more secular, agnostic, atheist, or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it or how you explain it. I will literally say there are people that I've known my whole life that I consider to be really good friends that will send me a message being like, how have you been? Haven't seen you in a while. Hit me up when you're back in town. And then a month later, it's sending me nasty, evil messages saying, you're going to burn. I'll like, you deserve this. You're sick, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's just like a light description. There are things that people have done to me that have resulted in like legal action that I'm like, I don't understand how that's possible that a person would become that so quickly. Mm-hmm. And that freaks me out because aside from things like that, where you could easily explain, sometimes people go crazy. I don't know, they had a stroke. Who knows? I've also personally witnessed things that, and recently too, I would describe as physically possible, but defying what we would expect to be possible. I've not witnessed like a crystal manifest before my eyes out of thin air, nothing like that. I have seen things that, they say in, I guess in quantum physics and mathematics, at some point, all of the oxygen in the room will be on one side, although that's trillions upon trillions of years for that probability to happen. I have seen things that I can only describe as winning the lottery 5 times in a row. So it's possible for these things to happen, but it's almost unbelievable. And then considering what we've seen in this country with all the behavior, I think people are letting in some kind of demonic force or darkness that's influencing their behavior.
Well, I think it was kind of like what you were hitting on. It's kind of this soft occultism that we're seeing, where people are just incorporating these just rituals into their daily lives because they're trying to fill that void of spirituality. Yeah, and you even beyond the tarot cards. I mean, you're just getting like just weird stuff that people have not incorporated in their lives prior, like daily affirmations, right? Like Pilates and stuff like that. And it's like they're trying to fill this void, and I think that's heavily contributing.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.